back when I was 18 and stupid in love. For Valentine's Day, I showed my love for Ethan Booth by memorizing 520 vocabulary words. To prove his love was just as strong, he immediately memorized 1,314 in return. We were so in love it made us idiots. We promised we'd both get into Harvard. In the end, he went to study abroad and I got rejected. Years after graduation, we met again on a construction site. Under the blazing sun, my t-shirt was soaked through with a grimy mix of sweat and dust. I was a complete mess, and he was the client there for an inspection. Come on, Ryan, another toast to Mr. Booth. In the private room at the hotel restaurant, I picked up the glass in front of me and, facing the head of the table, downed it in one go. My stomach, already full of alcohol, burned like it was on fire. But I had to keep a smile plastered on my face while my heart ached with a bitter, sour feeling. At the head of the table, Ethan Booth drank alone, a blank expression on his face. He didn't even spare me a glance. My boss, Mr. Davis, tried to smooth things over for me. Mr. Booth, you see, Ryan didn't mean any harm. He was just trying to do a good thing and messed up. He saw the workers' helmets were old and worn out, and since his inspection was done, he gave his to one of them. It's not that he was careless and forgot to wear a hard hat. The contractor, Mr. Wong, didn't like the sound of that. Hey, are you saying this is my fault, Mr. Davis? No, Mr. Wong, that's not what I meant. At all, I couldn't just stand there and watch my boss suck up to these guys and drink on my behalf. So I drank one glass after another, red wine and white liquor, mixing them all. But in the moments between drinks, I couldn't stop myself from stealing glances at Ethan. A trendy young man sat beside him, his business partner. He was also the main investor for the new tech park we were building. He slid a full bottle of liquor across the table toward me. All right, everyone calm down, he said. How about this? Do-me a favor. Ryan downs this bottle and we'll call it even. I stared at the bottle of premium, high-proof liquor, my hand trembling slightly as I held my glass. Mr. Davis's face turned pale. Mr. Gordon, this is... Ryan's already had a lot to drink. Another full bottle of this stuff. Something bad could happen. Ryan's just a designer's assistant, not even an associate designer, and he's out on the site playing foreman? That's not right. Where does that leave Mr. Wong's reputation? Mr. Wong, already visibly tipsy, puffed out his potbelly and patted his greasy face. Exactly. A junior assistant and you pull a stunt like that? It's a slap in my face. Are you trying to say I don't provide my workers with good hard hats? I listened as Alex Gordon, with his sly, fox-like eyes, fanned the flames and twisted the truth. I instinctively looked toward Ethan. He was staring down at his phone, looking bored. Not drinking, not trying to stop the drinking, just ignoring the passive-aggressive jabs flying around. My throat was dry. I let out a self-deprecating laugh. I picked up the bottle and filled my glass. 3 glasses in total. I raised the first one. My apologies, Mr. Wong. I wasn't thinking things through today. I'll drink this one to penalize myself. With that, I tilted my head back and drank it all down. The fiery liquor burned a path from my tongue down to my stomach. I put down the empty glass and picked up the second. Mr. Gordon, thank you for giving me the chance to clear up this misunderstanding today. This one's for you. Another glass went down, and a sharp pain began to throb in my stomach. But I couldn't bend over. Instead, I forced my back even straighter. And the third glass is for Mr. Booth. After the third glass, I held it in as long as I could, but I couldn't stop myself. I ran to the bathroom and threw up violently. Sharp, stabbing pains shot through my stomach, so intense I couldn't even stand. I ended up kneeling on the floor, feeling like I was going to vomit up my own bile. After I was done, it took me a long moment to find the strength to get up. When I pushed open the stall door, I saw a tall figure standing at the sinks, slowly washing his hands. It was Ethan. With no one else around, I couldn't suppress my feeling of injustice any longer. What, here to see if I've drunk myself to death yet? He turned around, drying his hands with a paper towel. All these years, and you still can't say a single nice thing. This cold, sharp version of Ethan was a stranger to me. I forced a smirk. You've certainly gotten more cutting. He glanced down at me. I've still got a lot to learn from you. My stomach was already hurting, and his cold words pushed me over the edge. A wave of hurt and pain washed over me. Suddenly, my stomach convulsed, and my vision went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital bed with an 4 in my arm. Ethan was sitting by my bedside, his eyes closed, resting. Only then did I get a real chance to look at him. He had matured so much. His face was sharper, more defined. The last traces of boyishness were completely gone. I was staring, lost in thought. A phone started ringing. His eyes snapped open, and before I could look away, our gazes met. I instinctively started to say something. Before I could figure out what to say, he answered the phone. His voice was gentle, a complete contrast to how he spoke to me. You should go to sleep. I'll be back as soon as I'm done here. A distorted male voice came from the other end. TSK, you made me wait for nothing again. How are you going to make it up to me when you get back? We'll talk later. Get some rest. I forgot what I was going to say. It was like a bolt of lightning had struck my brain, leaving it completely blank. After he hung up, I asked in a hoarse voice, was that your boyfriend? Do you have a new boyfriend? He raised an eyebrow slightly. What's it to you? He seemed to be in a very bad mood. What was I? Ruining your perfect romantic evening? If you didn't want to be here, why did you bring me to the hospital? The words sounded too much like an accusation, too bitter, and it felt like I was burning a bridge after he'd just helped me. I couldn't bring myself to ask. I forced a weak smile, but he looked down at my arm and asked, how'd you get these? Are you cutting yourself, Ryan? I followed his gaze to my arm, which was covered in cigarette burns and scars from a blade. 2 of the scars on my wrist were the deepest, usually hidden by my long-sleeved shirts and watch. The nurse must have rolled up my sleeve for the 4. My ugly, scarred arm was on full display. I felt a deep discomfort, like being seen naked. I tried to pull my sleeve down. Of course not, I retorted instinctively. Do I look like the kind of person who would self-harm? I feigned a self-deprecating tone. I was with a real piece of work. He was into that kind of stuff. And you just let him do that to you? Ethan's tone was sharp, almost aggressive. Weren't you afraid he'd kill you? What's it to you? It's not like you want to be with me anymore. My heart sank, but I tried to maintain my sharp, defensive front. Because I loved him. I was into it. You're pathetic, Ryan. He threw those words at me and left, leaving me alone in the hospital bed to curl up into a smaller and smaller ball. Even with the 4 drip, why did my stomach still hurt so much? I took the next day off. My boss, Mr. Davis, was a good man. It's rare to find an architect of his stature with such a good temper. He didn't hold it against me, and understanding that I had drunk myself sick, he gave me 2 extra days off. I checked the calendar and decided to go back to my hometown upstate. It was the anniversary of my mom's death. The sky was overcast. I bought a bouquet of small white chrysanthemums and went to the cemetery to see her. When I got there, I wiped off her faded photograph. I placed the white flowers in front of the headstone. I lit a cigarette and blew smoke toward her picture. White chrysanthemums are cheap, so you'll have to make do. It's your son's fault for being such a failure, broke and worthless. I laughed at myself. The old man's still in the care facility. Costs a fortune every month. I sold the house because my job doesn't pay enough to cover his bills. Anyway, you're gone and he doesn't live there anymore. And I don't want to go back to that house either. I haven't had a home for a long time. I have nothing left. Ethan doesn't belong to me anymore either. I saw Ethan again. If you knew that now, would you be angry enough to come back to life? But what can I do? Your son is gay. That's not going to change. Mom, I pushed you to your death. Now karma's here. I'm going to be completely and utterly alone. I casually stubbed out the cigarette on my arm. The stinging, burning pain came a second or 2 later. I don't know when it started raining, but by the time I came to my senses, I was already half-soaked. But I still didn't want to leave. I stared at the gentle smile of the woman on the tombstone. The guilt I felt was as deep as my resentment. I hated my mom and I hated myself. Mom, when you jumped from the roof, did it hurt? I knelt before the tombstone, pressed my forehead against the cold stone, and closed my eyes. The chaotic, absurd scenes from that day flashed through my mind, the twisted expressions on everyone's faces. It ended with the view from the rooftop, a pool of crimson blood and the prone figure of a woman. This woman, who had been timid her whole life, how did she find so much courage that day? To make her son break up with a man, to turn him back into a normal person, she was willing to threaten him with her own death. At 18, I fell in love with someone. And at 18, I lost everything. What kept me going through 10 years of hardship? What made me learn to speak again, to crawl back from hell to the world of the living? I think I just wanted to see Ethan again. What if he still liked me even a little? I owed him an apology from 10 years ago. I had to tell him in person. I closed my eyes and murmured, but it seems like he doesn't need it anymore. Mom, maybe I should come join you. Would you be ashamed of me? No answer. Just silence. Only the whistling wind and the sparse, pattering rain. The rain soaked through my shirt, and I could feel my body temperature slowly dropping. If I stayed here and slept forever beside you, would you forgive me, Mom? 10 years is too long. I can't hold on anymore. I'd already sent my resignation email to Mr. Davis. I'd deposited all the money left from selling the house into the nursing home's account. As long as my dad didn't get seriously ill, that money would be enough to keep him there for at least 20 years. People from his old job would visit him regularly, so I didn't have to worry about him being mistreated by the staff. After the sky turned completely dark, I slowly rose from the tombstone. I stumbled toward the hills behind the cemetery. There was a steep rock face there. The back hills were overgrown with thorns and weeds, and my hands and legs were scratched and bleeding. But I didn't care. I walked straight to the edge of the cliff. For 7 years, every time I came to see my mom, I would stand here for a while. Today, I'd finally made my decision. I took a step forward, but my phone suddenly rang, shattering the silence. I hesitated for a second, then picked it up. It was an unknown number. In that moment, a strange feeling came over me. This was Ethan. I swallowed hard and answered the call. Hello. There was a long silence on the other end, so long that I thought I had imagined it. Then, a familiar male voice came through, hoarse and trembling. Ryan, those scars on your arm. Was it really some asshole you were dating? I was stunned. I never thought he'd call me just to ask about that. After a moment's hesitation, I forced myself to lie. Yes, Ryan, why do you love lying so much? How many more times? Are you gonna lie to me? For a moment, I was confused. I'd only lied to Ethan twice. Once 10 years ago and once 3 days ago. Why did he make it sound like I'd deceived him 1,000 times? That year, I don't know how Ethan's parents found out about us. Their reaction was extreme. Even at such a critical time, they pulled him out of school. They wanted him to transfer to a school abroad and go to college there directly. But Ethan refused to go along with their plan. He fought back hard. He ran away from home, covered in bruises, to find me and celebrate my birthday. That was the last truly happy moment of my life. That day, his parents dragged him back home. When I got home, my dad slapped me across the face. My mom was sitting on the sofa, her eyes swollen from crying. She rushed over and grabbed me. Ryan, how could you like men? Break up with him right now. We'll move. Get far away from him. You're a disgrace. Do you have any idea they're talking about this at my work? You've completely shamed me. My dad slapped his own face. Then, still furious, hit me again. I stumbled back a few steps and just knelt on the floor.
Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I liker menn.
I was born this way. I was the one who pursued him. Shut up. My dad came at me and kicked me square in the chest. A sharp pain shot through me. I collapsed to the ground, curled up, and couldn't get up for a long time. My mom was horrified. She grabbed my dad and pleaded with me. Ryan, apologize to your father. Tell him you don't like that boy anymore. How can you like men? You've just been on your phone too much. Been corrupted by bad influences. I gasped for breath, clutching my chest, and looked at my dad, who was like a furious lion, and my mom, who was crying so hard she could barely breathe. My own tears started to fall, and I knelt before them, choking out the words, Mom, I really can't like girls. Hearing this, my dad grew even angrier and started punching and kicking me. His reputation was the most important thing to him. I had good grades, was good-looking, and while I could be rebellious, I was generally obedient. I used to be his pride and joy, something he could boast about. But now, I had become a stain on his life. He cursed as he hit me. You worthless son. Have you lost your mind? Fucking around with a man? Aren't you disgusted with yourself? Do you know someone threw a picture of you kissing a boy in my face at work? And now you have the nerve to tell me you like men? I raised you all these years just for you to piss me off. The more he talked, the angrier he got and the harder he hit. I'm telling you, you have to stay away from that boy, or I'll beat you to death. I curled up on the floor, protecting my head, letting him hit and curse me. I didn't know what hurt more, my body or my heart. My eyes were filled with pain and confusion. I didn't know what I had done wrong. Your sexuality is something you're born with. I just fell in love with someone. I didn't break any laws or deceive anyone. My mom went from joining in the scolding to seeing my dad lose control. She tried to pull him away, but he just shoved her off. Stop hitting him. You're going to kill him if you keep this up. My mom tearfully tried to come and hold me, but my dad pulled her back again, pushing her so she slammed her back against the coffee table. She cried out in pain. I immediately looked up. Mom, are you okay? Tears filled my mom's eyes, and she suddenly screamed and ran out the door. Frank, if you beat our son to death, I'll die with him. You can live on your own. As she said this, she started running up the stairs. Forgetting everything else, I scrambled to my feet and chased after her. My dad froze for a moment, his senses returning, and then he followed us. I never knew my gentle, seemingly fragile mother could run so fast. She ran all the way to the top floor and stood on the stone railing, looking at me with tears streaming down her face, pleading, Ryan, break up with him. Is he more important than us, than your family? My lips trembled. I wanted to go and pull her down, but she just screamed, so I had to stop. I couldn't answer her question, because this wasn't something that would be solved just by me breaking up with Ethan.
I liker men.
If it wasn't Ethan, it would be some other guy. I couldn't lie to them and promise to find a girl, get married, and have kids. That would be agony for me and even more unfair to the girl. But right now, I didn't dare provoke my mother. I could only beg her, please just calm down. Come down from the railing. We can go home and talk. Okay? A crowd was starting to gather below, and some neighbors who lived near the top floor came up to the roof to try and reason with my mom. This was company housing. Everyone knew each other. But then my dad suddenly spoke up. Ryan, are you still not going to agree? Are you trying to force your mother to kill herself? As soon as he said that, a hush fell over the rooftop. All eyes turned to me. My head spun for a second. I looked at my dad. His eyes were full of grim determination. My parents, together, were using my mother's life to blackmail me. I was silent for 2 seconds, then knelt before my mother. An image of Ethan flashed through my mind, from just a few hours ago. His lips bruised but smiling as he wished me a happy birthday. He had said, just hold on, Ryan. It'll be better once we get to college. We'll leave this town and go to Boston, to the best university together. Once we get to college, we'll be free. I closed my eyes, a tear sliding down my cheek. My voice was impossibly hoarse. Okay, Mom, I'll break up with him. Please come down, okay? My mom's tears turned to a smile. That's right, she murmured. Just break up and our family can go back to how it was. My dad had a satisfied, almost triumphant look on his face. He quickly went to help my mom down. But I don't know if it was because it was getting dark, or if her nerves suddenly gave way. My mom suddenly swayed and fell backward. My dad grabbed her hand and pulled with all his might, but he couldn't hold on. The force of her fall pulled him forward, too. The scene played out in my mind like it was in slow motion. I watched, frozen, as my dad's face filled with terror and he let go. Mom! The moment she started to wobble, I had scrambled up and lunged forward, but it was too late. I could only watch as she fell, finally becoming a blossom of blood on the pavement below. Screams and gasps erupted from everyone, on the roof and on the ground. A moment later, my dad came to his senses and slapped me across the face. You animal! You killed your mother! I was in a daze. The world suddenly felt very far away. All the voices, the screams and accusations, became distant. My eyes could only see that flower of blood. Growing up, my mom had always been so gentle. She was timid, afraid of bugs, and even more afraid of pain. She used to say the most painful thing she ever experienced was giving birth to me. It hurt so much that she didn't want a second child. I was her only son, her only treasure. Mom, what hurt more? Giving birth to me or falling from the 12th floor? I got through my mother's funeral in a fog. Everyone looked at me with accusation and contempt. My dad stood by, heartbroken, his hair turning gray at the temples in just a few days. Poor Frank. Lost his wife so late in life, and his son is so ungrateful. His mother gave birth to a curse. He drove his own mom to her death over a man. The whispers were endless. But that was only the beginning of the nightmare. After my mom's funeral, with only 3 months left until the college entrance exams, my dad suddenly went to my school, pulled me out, and sent me to a conversion therapy center deep in the mountains. It was a closed facility. The staff, who called themselves instructors, were all smiles with my dad, promising they could fix my sexuality. Homosexuality is a disease. Kids these days get it from being on their phones too much, being exposed to all sorts of things. Don't you worry, we specialize in curing this disease here. The results are fantastic. Look, these are all successfully cured cases. My dad listened, satisfied, and left me in hell. There were cameras everywhere, even in the bathrooms. Sometimes the instructors would broadcast footage of us using the toilet on a big screen for everyone to see. It happened whenever they felt like it, even in the cafeteria during meals. At first, the sight made my skin crawl and I couldn't eat. Eventually, I grew numb. We, the people the instructors called perverts, had to live under 24/7 surveillance, judged by everyone. Beatings were the norm. Even more terrifying were the various tranquilizers and electric shocks. My dad gave them the pictures of me and Ethan kissing. They would play gay porn in front of me with our pictures, taped all over the TV. The moment I had any physical reaction, the dozens of electrodes attached to my body would release a jolt of electricity. The doctors would question me again and again. You pervert, do you still like men? Liking men is a disease. If you keep liking them, you'll have to keep taking medicine and getting shocked, until you're cured. Gradually, their treatment started to work. I became terrified of seeing Ethan's picture. The instructors thought their therapy was working, that I was starting to hate Ethan. But that wasn't it. I hated myself. My ugly, cowardly, despicable self. I spent 3 full years in that conversion therapy center. In the end, it wasn't my dad who got me out. He had a stroke and stopped paying the tuition, so they kicked me out. I had nothing and was completely unable to function in normal society. After selling the house to pay his medical bills, I thought about just ending it all. But while cleaning out my old room, a picture of Ethan fell out of one of my textbooks. It was one I had secretly taken of him before we were together. He was reading in the library, a huge bookshelf filled with books behind him. He was looking down at a book, his expression calm, but his profile was unbelievably beautiful. My first reaction was to tremble and shrink into a corner. Seeing Ethan meant being beaten, starved, and electrocuted. But this time, the violence didn't come. It took a long time for me to remember that I had left that place. Fighting back fear and nausea, I started to crawl toward the picture of Ethan. It was less than 15 feet away, but it took me from dusk till dawn to cross that distance. My body was at war with my will. As the first rays of morning light streamed in, I finally touched him. In that moment, I was a complete wreck, with dried tear tracks staining my face. And suddenly, I didn't want to die anymore. I still wanted to see Ethan one more time, to tell him I was sorry. I had broken our promise. I didn't get into our dream school with him. I wanted to know how he was doing. Was he free? I went to Boston, the city we had planned to go to together. I couldn't afford a therapist or medication for my depression. On many nights, I would sit with a knife and a photograph in front of me. When I really couldn't take it anymore, I would turn the photo over and lightly cut my arm. Letting some of the pain out would make it a little better. When I made it to morning, looking at Ethan's picture would give me the courage to live for one more day. Life in the conversion center had been utterly devoid of stimulation. No books, no newspapers. The only thing on TV were pornographic films and the shameful antics of us perverts. My brain was fried by all that garbage and the drugs. Studying became incredibly difficult for me. But I worked odd jobs and bought books on architecture, forcing myself to learn, bit by bit. If I didn't understand it the first time, I'd read it 100 times. By a stroke of luck, I met Mr. Davis, a famous architect. I became his assistant. Maybe I would never become an architect myself, but it was enough to be a little closer to my old dream. It felt like, in a way, I was getting a little closer to Ethan's future, too. But now it feels like I've run out of energy. Everyone is moving forward, including Ethan. Only I seem to be forever stuck at 18. If only I had really stayed at 18. If only it had been me who died that year, not my mother. I gripped my phone tightly, forcing a smile, and asked with the forced calm of an old friend, "Ethan, are you doing okay now?" As long as I heard that he was happy, I would have no regrets. But Ethan didn't answer me. Instead, he asked, "Ryan, where are you right now?" His voice was tense. It suddenly reminded me of the time right before we broke up. He was always on edge, but tried to act relaxed. Ethan was always a very perceptive person. "Back in my hometown," I said. I didn't want him to worry, so I cruelly cut the last thread between us. "I got tired of kissing ass for you guys in Boston. I quit my job and came home to check out." "Check out how? In a coffin?" Ethan's suppressed anger crackled over the phone. It almost sounded like he was right beside me. My hand trembled, and I slowly turned around. Behind me stood a tall figure. "Ethan." I slowly lowered the phone from my ear and stared at him. My lips moved, but I didn't know what to say. He, however, walked toward me, his expression grim. "What? Thinking of jumping? Then jump. I can jump with you. We couldn't die together for love at 18. It's not too late at 28. He was so intimidating that I couldn't help but step back. The ground was wet from the rain. Suddenly, my foot slipped, and I fell backward. Behind me was nothing but the jagged cliff face. My pupils constricted in terror. But the next second, an arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me into an embrace. We both fell forward onto the ground with the force of gravity. For the first time in 10 years, I was in Ethan's arms. His arms were stronger than they were 10 years ago, holding me so tightly it felt like he was afraid I'd slip away. His heart was pounding, a torrential downpour against my back. "Ryan, you're so damn cruel. What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer, just held me tighter, as if trying to merge me into his very bones. Ethan took me to the hotel where he was staying. It took me a while after we got to his room to come to my senses and ask, "Why are you staying in a hotel instead of at home?" His parents should still be around and well. Ethan had been silent the whole way. He took a towel out of his suitcase, pushed me into the bathroom, and wordlessly started pulling off my clothes. I tried to fight back, but it was useless. He was too strong. He stripped me completely naked. I looked down, my shoulders hunched, standing awkwardly under the bright bathroom light with nowhere to hide. I instinctively crossed my arms, trying to cover the crisscrossing scars. But it was no use. I couldn't hide them all. Ethan tilted my chin up, forcing me to look at him. I met his gaze and saw that his eyes were red. A lump formed in my throat, and I turned my head away. He was silent for a long time before turning on the water to wash me. When his fingers brushed over the wounds on my arms, his touch was incredibly gentle. After he was done, he told me to go to sleep, but he went out to the balcony to smoke and make a phone call. I don't know what was said on the other end, but his expression grew colder and colder. His eyes like those of a wolf whose cub had been hurt, full of pain and ferocity. Finally, he stood with his back to me for a long time. I couldn't see his face. I felt a bit lost, unsure of how things had gotten to this point. Doesn't he have a new boyfriend? My mind was a mess. There was no way I could sleep. But when he came back inside, I closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep. He sat on the edge of the bed all night, just watching me. I felt his fingers hovering over my face, as if tracing my features in the air. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. "Ryan, Ryan." His voice was full of pain. I was confused, but I didn't dare respond. He stayed like that until morning, when he went back to the balcony to take another call. When he came back in, the atmosphere around him was heavy. He woke me up, his voice hoarse. I pretended to be slowly waking up. "Can we go back to Boston first?" He was speaking quickly and had already packed all his luggage while I was getting ready. As soon as I finished washing up, he grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the door. But the moment we opened it, we came face to face with a middle-aged couple. A shiver ran through me. It was Ethan's parents. Ethan let go of my hand and pushed me back into the room. "Ryan, stay in here. Don't come out." His voice was low, as if he was suppressing something. Before I could react, his mother lost it. Her eyes red as she screamed at him, "Ethan, are you really going to fight with us over a high school dropout?" He's a man. What you're doing is wrong. It's sick. Ryan, get back in the room. Ethan, come home with us. Ethan and his father spoke at the same time. Compared to his mother's hysterics, his father seemed much calmer. My mind was spinning. The way his mother looked at me, it was like she wanted to kill me, to drink my blood and eat my flesh. But she was still Ethan's mother. At least Ethan's parents were alive and well. I didn't want him to end up like me. I tried to pull my hand out of his. Ethan, you should go home with your parents first. Ethan whipped his head around, his grip on my hand tightening until it hurt. Don't call them that. They don't deserve it. Hearing this, his mother completely lost control. Ethan, I must have sinned to have given birth to you. Are you going to abandon your parents and your home for this pervert who drove his own mother to suicide? Do you think this guy loves you so much? He's just after our family's money, after the fact that you're successful now. Don't you know his father had a stroke and is paralyzed? He doesn't have the money to take care of him, so he's latched onto you again. Why else wouldn't he have contacted you for all these years? The moment you come back to the country, he's on you like a fly on meat. He's a parasite. My body temperature dropped with every word she said, until I couldn't help but shiver. I looked at Ethan, wanting to explain that it wasn't like that. But I opened my mouth and no sound came out. The scene in front of me started to distort. The whole world began to shake. A black fog spread across my vision, obscuring everything. Run, just run, Ryan. Run to a place where no one knows you. How can you say that without feeling ridiculous? Do you have any shred of morality or shame left? Ethan's trembling voice questioned his own mother. Why did Ryan drop out of high school? Wasn't it all your design? How did his parents find out he was with me? Why was he sent to a conversion therapy center? You used his phone number to lie to me for 3 years. The color drained from both his parents' faces. His mother blurted out, How do you know? But she immediately tried to backtrack. We just told his parents the truth. You two should never have been together in the first place. If you hadn't been messing around, none of this would have happened. His father also spoke, his voice stern. Ethan, you're a grown man now. It's time to be sensible. Be good and come home with us. As for this person, if you're really that worried, we'll pay to have his father taken care of. Then you'll have done more than enough. You have a bright future ahead of you. There's no need to defy your parents and throw it all away for a man like this. Ethan didn't back down. He held my hand tightly and faced his parents. My attempts to pull away were pathetic against his firm grip. The black fog swirled in my vision. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Suddenly, a group of men in black suits appeared at the end of the hallway. They pushed through the people Ethan's parents had brought and escorted us downstairs. When we got into a car, I heard a familiar voice. You guys okay? I looked toward the driver's seat and vaguely saw a pair of sly eyes filled with complex emotions. It was Alex Gordon, Ethan's partner. Ethan shook his head. Thanks for today. Don't mention it, Alex said with a wave of his hand. Ethan looked down at me. I kept my eyes lowered, not wanting him to see that something was wrong. But his words were spinning in my head. He knew everything. I started to tremble uncontrollably. All the humiliating parts of my past that I never wanted him to know. That dark, sunless time that made me sick to my stomach just thinking about it. Ethan took me on a long journey back to Boston. On the way, I couldn't hide it from him any longer. He noticed my blurred vision and the ringing in my ears. He took me straight to the hospital for a checkup. I was silent the whole time. It wasn't until we were alone in his house that I asked him softly, What did you mean? They used my phone number to lie to you for 3 years? Ethan silently pulled me into his arms. I'm sorry, Ryan. I'm so sorry. I should have been there with you. After I left your birthday party that day, my parents forced me to go abroad. They used your number to contact me the whole time, to keep me calm. I can't believe I didn't realize. I'm so sorry. His voice cracked with a sob. I opened my mouth to comfort him but tasted my own salty tears. I just felt so tired. Everything was so hard. It was like a massive mountain was pressing down on me, crushing the air from my lungs. Ryan. The last thing I heard before I passed out was Ethan's hoarse, terrified shout. I was diagnosed with severe depression with major somatic symptoms. The doctor also said I had self-harm tendencies. But I was just in so much pain inside. I just wanted to let a little of it out. Ethan stayed by my side constantly. We slept in the same bed, and he would wake up with a start even if I just got up to use the bathroom. In just a few days, he looked haggard. His mother was right. I was a parasite, feeding on Ethan's life force to survive. As long as I was alive, I would eventually suck him dry. It shouldn't be this way. He had a brilliant future ahead of him. I didn't deserve this from him. At 3 in the morning, I woke up as the sleeping pill wore off. Ethan was holding me, and he woke up the moment I moved. "Ryan, I'm going to the bathroom. You can go back to sleep," I said softly. Then I went to the bathroom alone. The aftereffects of the sleeping pill made me groggy and unsteady on my feet. Ethan had locked away every sharp object in the house, including the razors in the bathroom. All the sharp corners were padded. I went straight to the sink. The rinsing cups had been replaced with plastic ones, but my target was the toothpaste. This particular brand had a layer of aluminum inside the plastic tube. Back at the conversion center, someone who couldn't take it anymore had tried to kill themselves with a toothpaste tube. They were found and they failed, but I remembered. I bit down hard on the tube, splitting my lips, not caring about the small cuts the metal made. Once I was sure I had a sharp enough edge, I pressed it hard against my neck. "Ryan." The metal was against my throat, and I had just started to apply pressure when my hand was violently knocked away. I stared blankly for a second, then looked up. Ethan's face was a mask of terror and fury. I was silent. I didn't know what to say, but he was the first to move. He knelt, wrapped his arms around me, and said in a hoarse voice, "Is it the pain inside? Talk to me, okay? Please don't hurt yourself." My heart ached, but I was speechless. We had been apart for too long, gone through too much. I no longer knew what to say to him. We were from two completely different worlds. Finally, I could only murmur, "Ethan, just leave me alone. Let me go." He let go of me, holding my shoulders to make me look at him. His body and his pajamas were stained with a lot of blood. Only then did I realize my collarbone hurt. The toothpaste tube must have been knocked aside. It was supposed to slice open the artery in my neck, but it had hit my collarbone instead. "Ryan, I'm in pain too. Does this make it better?" Ethan asked suddenly. Then, with one hand, he pinned both of mine. With the other, he picked up the piece of torn toothpaste tube. He aimed the sharpest point at himself, starting from his collarbone and dragging it down. As I watched in horror, he carved a deep, long gash into his own skin. "What are you doing?" I screamed, struggling to stop him. "Ryan, I'm sorry. I should have been there with you. I'm sorry. If it weren't for my parents, you never should have gone through all that. I'm sorry." He rested his head on my shoulder, repeating those 3 words over and over. His voice was choked, like it was filled with blood. "No," I said in my mind. Even if his parents had exposed us, they couldn't control my mom jumping off the roof. And my dad sending me to that place wasn't something they forced him to do. In all of this, who was really to blame? My tears were like a bursting dam. 10 years of accumulated dust and grime churned up with the murky flood, rushing toward an unseen future. From that day on, for every new wound that appeared on my body, a deeper one would appear in the same place on Ethan's. The first time a cigarette burn appeared on his clean, strong forearm, it was like a blow to my head. This wasn't supposed to happen. He couldn't do this. Gradually, I started to control my urge to self-harm. I started taking the medications I feared and loathed. The pills would make my nerves either unnaturally agitated or deeply depressed, always reminding me of being force-fed tranquilizers at the conversion center. But the doctor said the medication would help me control the impulse. Ethan was very busy. The company he started with Alex had just moved its operations to the country. But during this time, he stayed by my side. Once my condition stabilized a bit, he would take me to the office with him. We were practically inseparable. "All right, I'll watch him. Okay? I really can't figure out this data. You go take a look." Alex waved Ethan away, but Ethan looked at him uncertainly. I nodded and said, "I'm fine. You can go." In truth, I had repeatedly told him I didn't need him to be with me all the time, but I had lost all credibility with him on that front. He would never trust me about it again. "I'll be right back," Ethan said, kneeling in front of me and looking into my eyes to promise. After he left, Alex plopped down in front of me. Hearing his voice, I suddenly remembered that on the day I was hospitalized for my stomach, the person on the phone with Ethan seemed to be Alex. In an instant, I felt awkward. That phone call had been so intimate. I couldn't help but wonder if they were together. And Ethan's current behavior toward me was just out of guilt. As my mind raced, Alex spoke first. Ryan. I looked up at him abruptly. He smiled. First, I want to apologize. Forcing you to drink that night. I only found out later that it put you in the hospital. I'm sorry about that. I was silent for a moment, then said, It's okay. You and Ethan. I wanted to ask, but the words got stuck in my throat. But Alex was a smooth operator. Seeing my conflicted expression, his face suddenly turned strange. What? Looking at you like that? Don't tell me you think there's something going on between me and Ethan? Did Ethan use me to get a rise out of you? He asked, rubbing his arms. I said nothing. He clicked his tongue. You can tell I'm gay, but you can't tell that Ethan and I are both tops? My eyes widened slightly. His expression changed. You really can't tell? What's that supposed to mean? Are you trying to insult me? No. Alex huffed and continued. The reason I gave you a hard time with the drinks was because I recognized you that night. Everyone at the company knows our CEO, Mr. Booth, has a boyfriend. I was his classmate in college, so I know a bit more. From his freshman year, he lived a very frugal life. Besides classes, he was working non-stop jobs. But every month, he would still send a sum of money back home to his boyfriend, because his boyfriend's father was sick and needed a lot of money every month. He barely rested for his entire undergraduate degree, sleeping only 4 or 5 hours a night. But in his graduation year, his lover dumped him, right when he was at the most critical stage of his final project. My whole body started to tremble. Alex continued, he was like a madman during that time. No one could stop him from going back home. I don't know what he went through there, but when he came back to the US 2 weeks later, he was a completely different person. Before, even when he was busy and washing dishes like a dog, he would smile when he talked about his boyfriend. Afterward, he was still just as busy, but he became colder and more detached. It wasn't until he came back and ran into you that he suddenly asked me to look into your past. That's when I found out what happened. It turns out his parents were the ones using your phone number to contact him all along. They orchestrated it carefully, minimizing conversations to avoid slipping up. Even when they did talk, it was always to complain about how tired they were, how much trouble it was to take care of your father, to complain about why he wasn't by your side, or to string him along, setting up meetings and then standing him up. His parents were trying to use the tedious, stressful realities of life to make Ethan resent you. But he never once thought you were a burden. He only blamed himself for not being able to help more, for being too incompetent. Alex's expression grew serious. He only learned the full story when I told him what my investigation turned up. I was stunned. I could never have imagined that was what Ethan's life was like abroad. His family was well off. How could his parents have been so cruel to him? My heart clenched painfully. Alex looked at me and said seriously, I'm not telling you this so you'll forgive his parents or anything. He can't even forgive himself. I just think, you both survived such a difficult time on your own. He worked so hard for so long, to finally have the ability to be free with the person he loves. Ryan, don't die just before the dawn. 3 years later. Are the results out? The moment Ethan walked in, he hugged me, squeezing onto the sofa and staring nervously at my computer screen. I kept my head down, hugging my knees, not saying a word. He immediately tried to comfort me. It's okay. We can just try again next year. You're already amazing. He pulled me into his lap. I still didn't say anything. He kissed my forehead, then slowly moved down to my lips. His lips and tongue teased me relentlessly, but I acted completely uninterested. He pulled away from my lips and whispered coaxingly, Don't be upset. If you still want to take the exam, we'll do it again next year. If you don't, that's fine too. No pressure. We have plenty of money. You can do anything you want. I saw the landscape designs on your desk. I'll fund it, find you a piece of land, and we can build that garden first. How about it? I buried my head in his neck, my shoulders shaking slightly. Why are you crying? It's just an architect's license. It's not like when we were in high school. They're not worth that much anymore. Don't cry. How about tonight I wear that uniform you bought me? You said it. I suddenly lifted my head, my eyes crinkling into a smile as I looked at him. He froze for a moment, then touched my dry cheeks in confusion. You're not crying. Then what's this wet spot on my neck? My drool. I was smiling so hard I forgot to close my mouth. I laughed. Take a closer look at my computer screen. He looked down. Well, I'll be damned. You passed. Are you messing with me? He started tickling me. As I squirmed away, I demanded, what did you just say? You said my architect's license isn't worth much. I said no such thing. Not many people in the entire state can pass that exam. This value goes without saying. You better believe it. I lifted my chin at him. Go take a shower and change. Tonight, you do what I say. Fine, I'll go, I'll change. I'll listen to you. I watched Ethan walk into the bedroom, then looked down at the computer screen again. For the past 3 years, I had been in active treatment. I'd gotten my bachelor's degree online, passed my architect's licensing exam, and returned to Mr. Davis's firm. I was back on the path to my dream. Even though I was 10 years late, I still had a lot of time to catch up. It was the anniversary of my mother's death again. Every year around this time, my depression is likely to relapse. Depression can only be managed, not cured. My brain is permanently altered. I'm destined to have more intense emotional fluctuations than a normal person, to be more prone to despair. Even changes in season and weather can trigger strong mood swings. I am fated to fight this battle for the rest of my life, until it either defeats me, or I die of old age, taking it with me. It's hard. But luckily, Ethan is always by my side. I stood before my mother's grave. She would probably never like Ethan. He had respectfully waited for me at the cemetery gate. Mom, I'm still with Ethan. I'm sorry I can't be the kind of outstanding, conventional son you wanted. But you once said I was your only treasure. So my happiness must be important too, right? Mom, I'm very happy now. I bowed deeply. Then I straightened up and started walking down the hill. Ethan was standing not far away, watching me with a smile. Alex was right. I couldn't die just before the dawn. I'm going to walk into the sunlight with the man I love.